Once, in a city where dreams hide behind boutique windows and whisper in the rustle of silk dresses, lived a 19-year-old girl named Lyra. Her heart was as pure as morning dew on jasmine petals, and no one had ever touched it. Not with words, not with glances, not with kisses. She did not see this as a flaw. On the contrary, in her eyes, innocence was not weakness but strength. The very strength that allows one to see the world without illusions, yet without fear. Lyra lived in a modest apartment on the outskirts of the city, worked in a library, and each morning wrote in an old leather-bound journal. There, she recorded not only thoughts but also questions to which she had no answers yet. Why does love frighten me so? Can a soul find its match when their bodies differ in age? If I give away my heart, will anything whole remain within me? She believed that love was not about age, wealth, or even beauty. It was the silence between two souls when the world falls quiet just to listen. But to believe is not the same as to know. And one day, fate decided to test her convictions. It happened at a charity auction for a children's shelter. Lyra had been invited by a friend who worked for the foundation. "You must step out of your shell," her friend had said. "The world doesn't begin and end within the four walls of a library." Lyra wore her only evening dress, simple, blue, without glitter, but sewn with soul. She didn't know that this evening would change her life forever. He entered not with noise, but with dignity. His name was Adrian. He was 50. He walked into the room as though he weren't opening a door, but parting the curtain of time itself. His gaze was calm, like a mountain lake, and his hands, strong, yet gentle. He wasn't seeking youth, he wasn't collecting hearts. He simply lived, deeply, slowly, with grace. Their eyes met over a vase of white lilies. In that instant, Lyra felt her soul stir for the first time, like a bird before its first flight. She didn't yet understand that this was the beginning of a journey, not just a fleeting attraction. Adrian approached her slowly. He waited until she lifted her eyes herself. "You're not one of those who came here for social games," he said softly. "No," she replied. "I came because I believe kindness should be heard." "Then perhaps our souls already know each other," he smiled. And so their story began. They started seeing each other, slowly, without conditions. He didn't give her diamonds, he gave her books, sunsets, and long conversations about what remains after words fade. He read her Rilke's poetry, told her of travels where he'd seen dawn over the desert and heard whales sing in the Pacific. She read him passages from her journal, and he listened as if each word were a revelation. He never rushed. Not even when she, trembling with emotion, first allowed him to kiss her. His lips barely brushed hers, feather light, and he whispered, "You have the right to stop everything at any moment. Your purity isn't a barrier. It's a gift. I don't wish to steal it. I want you to choose freely to whom you give it." In that moment, Lyra understood. He didn't want to possess her. He wanted to be beside her, exactly as she was. But the deeper their bond grew, the stronger her fear became. "I'm too young. He's too wise. This isn't love. It's an illusion. I'm not worthy of his world," she whispered to herself one morning, staring at her reflection in the mirror of his bedroom. She felt she was merely a fleeting distraction for him, a beautiful pause between business meetings. That one day he'd wake up and realize, beside him wasn't a woman, but a girl who still didn't know what she wanted from life. And yet, one night, she decided to stay with him. Their first night together was strange. He was tender, as always, but something shadowed his eyes. Not passion, not desire, but something else. Something heavy, hidden, almost invisible. When she touched his shoulder, he flinched, as if her fingers had brushed an old wound. He didn't sleep. He lay with his eyes open, staring at the ceiling. breathing so quietly it seemed he feared waking the past. "Are you all right?" she asked. "Yes," he answered, but his voice trembled. She didn't press further. But from that night on, a quiet unease settled in her heart. Weeks passed. He fell silent more often. Sometimes, gazing out the window, head freeze so completely it seemed he was no longer there, but somewhere far away, in a place she couldn't reach. One day, after a walk in the park where they spoke less than they walked, Lyra could bear it no longer. "Adrian," she said, looking straight into his eyes, "if there's a wall between us, I want to know what it's made of. Because I'm not afraid to tear it down. I'm afraid you're hiding behind it yourself." He was silent for a long time. Then he rose, walked to the bookshelf, took out a worn notebook bound in leather, and placed it before her. "This is my journal," he said. "I haven't written in it for 10 years. But that night, the first time you stayed with me, I picked up a pen again. Because I could no longer carry this alone." He sat across from her and began to speak. 15 years ago, I was a different man. Successful, confident, reckless. One night, after an argument with someone close to me, I got behind the wheel in anger. I drove too fast. The city slept. I did not. And suddenly a person ran out from around the corner. I didn't have time to stop. His voice broke. He lowered his eyes. It was a young man. A student. He was holding a bouquet of flowers, probably on his way to his girlfriend. He died on the spot. I stopped. I tried to help, but it was too late. He fell silent. A thick silence filled the room, dense as fog. I didn't flee. I called the police. I went through the trial. They didn't imprison me. It was ruled an accident. But I imprisoned myself. Every night, I see his face. Every sunset reminds me that I took someone else's." Lyra listened, breathless. She didn't know what to say. But suddenly she understood. His silence, his caution, his fear of touch. None of it came from coldness, but from guilt. He was afraid he didn't deserve to be loved. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" she whispered. "Because I was afraid you'd leave. And you were the first light in my life since that night. I couldn't bear to lose you, even for the sake of truth." She stood, walked to him, and embraced him as only those who understand that another's pain is part of love can embrace. "You didn't kill him on purpose," she said. "You live with this, and that is already punishment enough. But you don't have to suffer alone. Love isn't only joy. It's also forgiveness. Even when you must forgive yourself." From that moment on, the last wall between them vanished. He began going to church, not for penance, but for peace. She started reading him poetry before bed to quiet his nightmares. And in return, every morning he left a white rose on her nightstand, a symbol that even after the darkest night, something pure can bloom. But fear returned nonetheless. "I'm too young. He's too wise." And now this too, she whispered to herself one night. And so, on the night of the full moon, she left. She placed a white rose on the windowsill, a symbol of innocence and farewell, and vanished like morning mist. Adrian didn't call. He didn't pursue her. He simply waited. Because true love is not a chain, it is wings. And if a heart flies away, it simply isn't ready to return. He knew. If she came back, it would be forever. If not, then such was her path. He continued living. Read the same books. Watched the same sunsets. But now, in every sunset, he saw her eyes, in every book, he heard her voice. Meanwhile, Lyra returned to her old life, but everything had changed. The library felt too small. Her journal filled not with questions, but with sorrow. She tried to convince herself she'd done the right thing. But her heart refused to listen to reason. She walked the streets where they'd strolled together. Listened to the music he used to play in his car. Even the scent of coffee from that little corner cafe reminded her of his hands. Weeks passed. Then months. One day, flipping through an old photo album, she came across a picture taken at that very auction. In it, she stood by the vase of lilies, and in the glass reflection, his silhouette. She hadn't noticed it then. But now she saw. He hadn't looked at her as a beautiful stranger. Had looked as if he recognized her. And in that moment, she understood. She hadn't run from him. She'd run toward herself. Away from the fear of being loved. Away from the fear of being unworthy. But Adrian's love didn't demand her to be someone else. It simply accepted her, exactly as she was. Even with his shadow. Especially with his shadow. She came to him on a rainy day, without an umbrella, her hair soaked, her heart dry, because everything inside had already poured out in tears and prayers. He opened the door, unsurprised. As if he'd been waiting for this very day. "I've come back," she said. "Not because I need a home. But because you are my home. And your pain is part of that home too. I'm not afraid of it. I want to carry it with you." Adrian smiled the way only those who know that time is love's ally, not its enemy, can smile. "I always knew you'd return," he said. "Because you didn't run from me. You ran toward yourself. And now that you've found yourself, you've come back to me." Even knowing the truth. He didn't ask why she'd left. He didn't accuse. He simply took her hand and led her to the garden, where white roses bloomed in the rain. "Do you remember what I said the first time we met?" he asked. "That our souls already knew each other?" "Exactly. And souls don't make mistakes. They simply wait until the heart catches up to their courage. Even if the path leads through darkness." A year later, they married in that very garden. No lavish gowns, no reporters. Just two people who understood. Love isn't about age, status, or experience. Love is the courage to be yourself beside someone who sees you through and stays anyway. Only their closest friends attended. Among them was the elderly librarian who'd first given Lyra a book about love, and a boy from the shelter they'd supported. He gave them a drawing for their wedding. 2 trees, one tall and wide, the other young, yet already touching its branches. And on their wedding day, Adrian visited the grave of that young man for the first time in 15 years. He left a white rose there and said, "Forgive me. And thank you for letting me love again." And ever since, whenever someone asks Adrian how a man so wealthy and wise could marry a girl so young, he simply replies, "She's not a girl. She's a woman who dared to love, and dared to leave, so she could return of her own free will." And is there anything more beautiful than a love chosen twice? And Lyra, no longer a girl but a wife, a mother, and a writer, writes in a new journal each evening. On its first page is written, "Love does not rush. It waits until you understand. You are worthy of being loved, despite everything. And even the shadows of the past can become part of the light, if you share them with someone unafraid to stand in the dark beside you." And in that city where dreams hide behind glass, a legend now circulates, of a woman who walked away from love only to return stronger, wiser, and freer. Because true love is not a prison. It is wings. And only those who dare to fly deserve to come home. Even if home isn't perfect. Especially if it's real.